Hey everybody, welcome back to KETIV Virtual Academy. You made it to another Thursday. We have another great session for you today. We've got Jim Byrne and Marco Trinidad who are revisiting us for another What's New session. We were lucky enough to have them teamed up a couple weeks ago to talk about Fusion. Now we're talking about Inventor. Before we jump in though, I want to talk about some other cool stuff we'll be covering in the next couple weeks. So Jim's going to show a slide that we have sharing two different sessions related to AI. The first one coming up is June 25th, and this one is really catered to more of a leader audience, just talking about the shift in AI, that it is here, what the impacts of that are to teams. And then the following week, we're getting a little deeper in the weeds, really just talking about how it's applied via the Autodesk stack, via Autodesk Assistant. Both of these are hosted by our customer success team, Jeff and Brian. They've been really plugged in with customers, talking how they're using AI today. They're plugged in deeply with the product team and product marketing team at Autodesk talking about this. So we're excited that they have a real strong pulse on it. So please join one of those sessions. You'll be getting emails about them, but you can sign up right here, right now. So before we jump in, we do have open Q&A today. We're live, so please drop a question in the Q&A panel, and we'll try to grab them. If you exceed our ability to answer, we reserve the right to take those offline and respond to you via email. So yeah, I think other than that, though, we're pretty much ready to go. Jim and Marco, take it away.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, DJ. And as DJ mentioned, welcome everyone to this webinar. This is Inventor 2027, What's New? And so this is another amazing release. This is a great time of year. We get really excited about a lot of the enhancements that you're about to see when you install the software. And during this presentation, you've got myself. I'll be going through a lot of the slides to let you know what's new in the software. I'm part of the product marketing team here at Autodesk. As DJ mentioned, Marco is here too. He's most of you probably know him already. Application engineer here at KETIV, and he's going to demonstrate some of these things live to you. And of course, as DJ mentioned, we're going to answer as many questions as we can. So there's, like every major release of Inventor, there's over 100 enhancements that have been added. And ever since the What's New webinar that we did a year ago. And a lot of those enhancements have been added in point releases as well, especially in .1 and .2. Both of those are typically launched in the summer and the fall. Same thing coming up this year. And remember that the enhancements that we're going to be talking about today and in the future are driven by you who are here on the call. So if you do have ideas for future releases of Inventor coming up, whether it's in the next point release or the next major release, there's a lot of ways that you can go about doing this, because our team, the Inventor product team, spends a lot of time on the Inventor forums, which of course is a great place to speak with other Inventor users as well. And many of you are already using the Inventor forum. There's also the Inventor ideas page. The difference here is you have an opportunity to vote on suggested enhancements as well. And then there's also the feedback community, the Inventor feedback community, where if you are interested in what's coming in future releases, you can do that. You can get future roadmaps with the software. You can download and install future point releases and major releases of Inventor and try it out. In fact, now that I mention it, some of you might know, if you're already part of the feedback community, then I believe you received an email last week that 2027.1 is now in beta. You can install it right now and you can try it out. You just need to be part of the feedback community. And then you can also register for Inside the Factory events. If you haven't heard of those before, this is a great way to connect directly with the Inventor product team. And those events happen virtually if you can't make it, or if you happen to make it over to our Atlanta office or our Novi office in Michigan, then we often have these inside the factory events once or twice a year. I believe in Germany as well. And so that's another way for you to connect with our team to find out what's coming and vote on future enhancements. So for this release for 2027 for today, this is just a very brief agenda. We've got some general enhancements that we're going to kick us off with. And now in this, a lot of times the general enhancements are going to cover some of the smaller things that we've added to the release, but a few of our biggest enhancements are in the general category. And then moving into some updates for part modeling, assembly modeling, drawing creation, and we have a few things that we want to talk about for model states as well. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the updates that help you to collaborate better with interoperability. So the general category, we're starting out with one of our biggest things. A lot of you have probably seen it if you're on social media, or you've noticed that we've been talking about Autodesk Assistant a lot. And many of you know that this is not only for Inventor, it's across the board. It's included in the latest releases of Vault Professional, if you have it, AutoCAD, Revit, Fusion. We're talking about it a lot in Fusion because there's a lot of capabilities there as well. It is an AI-powered tool, and I think many of you are going to like it. I also know that many of you, if you're like me even, you're thinking, boy, I'm a little skeptical here. I'm not sure if this is something that I'm interested in. Some of you are very excited about it, and you're listening, and you can't wait to see what it can do for you. But what I want you to understand is Autodesk Assistant has the potential to be a very great design automation tool. For example, just using Inventor, it provides you with a lot of automation. You can move into iLogic and you get great automation capabilities to help you to reconfigure your products faster, things of that nature. Think of it, Autodesk Assistant, like that. It's really meant to help you to take away some of the tedious tasks that you might be doing every day. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But it's going to help you to interact with your designs. And the way that you do it is by typing things in plain language. And you can gain a lot of useful information about your designs. Sometimes you can even execute commands. You can generate parameters very quickly in your especially commonly used items. If you use iProperty information, which you should be, then that can be filled in and edited through Autodesk Assistant, or even export several file types like imagery things. You can have it open up your models from an assembly and have it generate isometric images of all of those components. So there's a lot of things that you can do. In fact, I've got some sample prompts that you can look at too. Once again, you may want to just simply pick or highlight all of the components that are a particular material property. Or maybe if you're looking to simplify your design, then you can just quickly select all of the parts of a particular size, or compare model states with each other. I already mentioned you can export screen captures of multiple parts, add iProperty information. So these are just a few examples of what a prompt might look like. And if you want to see what it looks like, these are some of those examples in action. Like, for example, model states. You can use many of you know you can use model states to create a simplified version of your part or assembly. So here we're telling it to select all of the fasteners that we have in the design. And then you can take action on that and tell the assistant to suppress just those components. Ooh, excuse me. And so you'll notice that over on the right, that's the Autodesk Assistant. It's a dockable panel. You can move it around. And here it's created those model states that we just asked for. And if we were to continue with that, We could do that for the components in the design too, where we select a bunch of the components and then tell it to create model states of just those parts. And the really neat thing here is you don't need to open any of those models. If we select, for example, 50 parts in the design, it's going to create those model states for you without even seeing the part open. And here's the parameter generation. This is a spur gear. It will create all of the standard parameters for that type of object. And it does it in less than a minute. So this is pretty amazing if you have a standard part that you're working on. This is a cabinet for something like furniture design. Same thing. Give me all the parameters that are necessary or essential for a kitchen cabinet. And now a lot of you might be saying, well, I don't, I don't work on furniture, but you can use this on anything. It could be a bearing or a hydraulic cylinder or a belt or a pulley. Um, and then if you haven't used parameters, then once you've created those and you begin modeling your part, or maybe you've already modeled it, then you can attach those parameters to those dimensions or to the maybe a feature dimension. In this case, like a shell feature, we can pick that parameter from here. And the beauty of that is now I can go into the parameters dialog and make those modifications to those dimensions. And then if you understand iLogic, then you can, of course, drag and drop those parameters into a nice form that anyone can use to fill out and enter that information in there as well. And then this is an example of telling the system that, hey, I'd like to have isometric or orthographic views, images, screen captures of this particular assembly. Or like I said, you can have it open all of the fabricated parts in this design and take screen captures of those parts. So lots of different things that you can do inside of Autodesk Assistant. These are just a few samples. And we're trying to create as many videos, by the way, as we can of the things that you can do, whether it's in Inventor or Vault or Fusion. If you want to see some of those examples, then continue to go to the YouTube page for those products, and you'll see more and more of these videos show up. All right. So iLogic, just continuing on with automation. Many of you are using iLogic. You love iLogic. It's a very powerful tool for automating the creation of new assemblies and drawings and speeding up some of those repetitive tasks that you have. And so now there's a really great new way of creating iLogic projects. This is called code blocks. And for a novice or intermediate user, it's awesome for creating your rules, for visualizing your code, where you can simply drag and drop your iLogic blocks into this interface that you see in that image, and you can make edits to those blocks. It's a great collaboration tool because everyone can understand it. Where if we open this up and you want to, for example, make any changes to the code, it's very easy for everyone to understand the blocks that you have in there. Marco is going to be demonstrating this a little bit later, so you can see more of what it looks like to drag and drop these in. And now, if you're looking at that image too, you'll notice that it's a nice learning tool too, because as you drag those blocks in, it will write the code immediately as you're making changes to these code blocks. So it's a good way to if you're later on when you're looking to create more complex code in your designs, this is going to help you to learn how to create it yourself. And then another thing that's worth knowing too is if you are using code blocks, then and you want to change it to a standard traditional rule, then you can simply I think Marco he'll probably show you what that looks like as well. And a couple other options worth mentioning too is for those of you that are already using iLogic, there's some run options that are available. There's silent operation, fire dependent rules immediately, don't run automatically. Those options can be changed in the browser or in your rule editor. And in the task scheduler, you can see another image there. You can disable all iLogic rules and event triggers as well. So parameters, we're mentioning parameters quite a bit in this presentation. So what's new in there? The parameters dialog is, as many of you know, is extremely useful for accessing and modifying some of the parameters, user parameters that you have in your design. Many of you are using it every day, all day in your design workflows. Well, now it's easier than ever to work with because the Inventor development team made it modeless. And that means that the dialogue is it's no longer going to block you from performing some of your typical actions inside of Inventor. You don't have to close the dialogue before you do something else. In fact, so it doesn't even need to be in Canvas. If you have two monitors, then you can drag and drop the parameters dialog over to your second monitor and use it that way. So for a lot of you, if you're using parameters, this is by far your favorite enhancement in Inventor 2027. And some of you might have already seen the enhancements that have been placed in the open and save dialogues. The development team has continued to improve this with a new search bar. So if, for example, you're working with part numbers as your file names, if you know just a portion of that part number, then you can type it in and you get a list of everything that satisfies that criteria. And then, so Inventor now is going to, it now uses DirectX 12 for graphics. And there is the option to go back and forth between DirectX 11 and 12. This is over in your application options, over in your hardware tab. And you're going to find that there's several advantages to using DirectX 12, where there's improved performance with large assemblies, things like zooming, panning, rotating your large assemblies. There's also reduced CPU overhead, where DirectX 12 is going to reduce a lot of those bottlenecks that you have on your CPU. It allows the GPU to handle more of the work, and of course, then freeing up some of your CPU for other tasks, and better multi-core CPU utilization where that applies. All right, so part modeling. This is another big one. There's a new slot feature. This is a great addition for a number of reasons. First, obviously, you no longer need to create a sketch and then extrude it. And just like the other new features that you've seen, there's a new property panel for it. And so everything that you need for the slot feature, for the placement and slot type is available in there. The slot size, the design intent that you want to use. Just like the whole feature, you can even drive the size of your slot based on fastener clearance. Similar, once again, similar to the way you do it in the whole feature. And then Marco is going to show you exactly how this works in a live demonstration pretty soon. One other thing worth mentioning is if you have whole features in your design already, you can right click on those and convert them to a slot feature. This is a one-way thing, so you can't go from slot feature to whole, but you can convert those holes to slots. And the beauty of this too is if your whole feature has maybe countersinks, or if it's a clearance hole for a particular type of and size of fastener, it's going to keep all of that parameter information for converting it to a slot. And then back over in the parameters dialog, like I said, there's quite a bit going on in here. Some of you are creating sheet metal parts, and you might have noticed that some of the user parameters, when you flatten your component, are all of a sudden gone. They're not available. So now when you flatten your part, Boolean and text parameters are available as reference. And this is another big one for a lot of you. Many of you on the call have very complicated feature trees, long feature trees, or you've got commonly used parts that you want to make it easier for everyone else in your team to understand. You can now add groups of features together in folders. You can even add subfolders or nested folders. And once you've created those folders in your browser and you create new ones, then you can drag and drop those in there as well. One of the things that's worth remembering here, though, is that the order of the features that you have in the tree is still important to your design intent. So there's going to be times where you can't drag a feature into a folder because it just simply won't allow you. You know, for example, you can't drag a bottom feature in your tree above your base feature, and so that's still going to be play a role. But again, this is a great enhancement for those of you that have very long feature trees. And for assembly modeling, the assembly mirror, the development team continues to make enhancements here. Some of you have seen them over the past few years. They like to call this on the Inventor team the super mirror because it seems to have achieved about every option that you could ask for in mirror. You're immediately going to notice several additional options inside of the mirror dialog. There's the legacy ones that you're used to seeing, like reuse, mirror, and exclude. Those are still the same. The icons I think look a little bit different in this release. And then there's new options for associativity, for copying and mirroring, and a saved copy option. And if we look at this next slide, these are some of the new buttons that you're going to see. The way that I like to look at it is, so I created a mirror using each one of those buttons, and you can see what the browser might look like depending on which one that you pick, whether you're making a mirrored or derived component in that first one, or in that second one, you'd like to add a mirror feature at the end of the feature tree, or you're creating a mirrored or derived component and you're breaking the associativity, or you simply want to suppress the associativity so you can always bring it back later. So these are some of the new icons that you're going to see inside of the mirror dialog. Oh, and this is just a quick video so you can see what it looks like. Once again, this is just so you can see the new interface as you're mirroring your assemblies. Once again, you've got some of your legacy options in there for reusing and mirroring components, but then some of the new ones for keeping associativity or adding a mirrored feature at the end of the browser. I believe one of the new options in here too is you can mirror a copy of the part on the other side, but then still give it a new name, even though it's a copy of that component. So, like I said, just about every option is available, and there's a new associative placement option in there too that I think I checked on in here. And then the Content Center, you now have the ability to include assemblies. And we can have a quick look at this too. This is a very simple demonstration that we can walk through. And in this demonstration, it has model states as well. So you know that, for example, if you have a air cylinder or hydraulic cylinder, then those model states will come with it when you place this into your Content Center. But there's a nice wizard that will walk you through the process for things like for when it comes to categories or where you want to place the assembly, naming conventions, things of that nature. It'll walk you through that whole process. And then when we place this inside of our assembly, there's also an option for placing it in as a standard component or as a custom instance, so that if you use the custom instance, then it gives you the ability to sorry, just a second. Sorry, something just came up on my screen. If you bring it in as a custom instance, then it allows you to rename and manage the internal components that are inside of that assembly. And then for component patterns, if you're creating patterns of your parts in your assembly, then you can now use a sketch line segment to define the direction of your pattern. And I think I've just got a short video of that here. But then if you do use that line segment for the direction, oops, sorry about that. Then of course you have the ability to edit the angle of that line segment and to update your component pattern that you have in your design. And so we mentioned the slot feature earlier for parts. This has also been added to assemblies. And just like other assembly features, it automatically detects the participant parts. And so you've got the option to either to remove or add those participants back when you add it as an assembly feature. And 3D annotations and model-based definition are now supported inside of assembly documents as well. So this is great news for those of you that are looking to add 3D annotations to your weld frames. And then with the support of formats like STEP 242 and JT, then that information can flow more seamlessly into manufacturing and some of your inspection workflows. For drawings, bill of material, it might come up where you've already created your bill of material, but then later you realize that you wanted to change the BOM view. Well, in the past, you'd have to delete the bill of material and then recreate it. Well, now you can just simply right-click on it to make that modification. And then since we have the new slot feature that we talked about earlier, then we also, of course, have enhancements around the behavior of them in your drawings. So there's a slot note or a slot note setting for dimensions. And then there's also an option to include slots and slot types inside of your hole tables. And then for point cloud, we've always had the ability to view the point cloud inside of your 3D model if you have an assembly or a part or assembly. Well, now you can view that data inside of your drawings as well. So if you click on a view and you change it to shaded, then you'll find that there's a new checkbox in there to display the point cloud data as well. And then also with drawing views, for those of you that are creating broken views, you might never have come across this before. But if you've got a part that's at an angle, like this example here, and you create a broken view, you might have found that it just doesn't look right once it's done. So now you can select an edge for a direct or for an orientation, and then your broken view will show up like it should appropriately that you can see over on the left. And then for model states, this one was actually new in Inventor 2026. You might have noticed that the active model state is shown in multiple locations, and this just simply makes it more apparent which one you're working on. And it's also a setting that can be changed in your application options. And then also for model states, there's a checkbox to generate all of the model states on save. And then you'll also notice that there's a preview image that shows below your cursor as you're moving over the model states in the browser. And then there's also table compare. Now, this one, again, was new in 2026.1. When you're working in your model state table and you select a model state, whichever one, and hold down control and pick on other model states, then you'll notice that some of the columns will show up in blue. And this is simply showing you that there's a difference between the first one that you selected and the other ones that you control selected. So interoperability, I mentioned point cloud data that can be shown inside of your shaded views in your drawings. And there's more enhancements for point cloud in the 3D space. There's the ability to create section views for your point cloud, which is similar to using crop. That's the way that many of you have done it thus far. And there's also new enhancements for crop as well, where you've got options for uncrop last and uncrop all. And then there's also the option to position point clouds using user coordinate systems. You'll notice that there's an option to choose from a list in cases where you might have multiple coordinate systems in the design. And so basically, this gives you more control when you're lining up. If you have an AutoCAD drawing or maybe a Revit file that you're bringing in, you want to very easily line up the point cloud data with those files. And then there's also some interoperability enhancements between Inventor and AutoCAD Plant 3D. And remember that for those of you that have access or subscription to the Product Design and Manufacturing Collection, I just want to make sure everyone knows that you have access to AutoCAD Plant 3D. And the reason why I bring that up is because in the past, if you had the collection, then you had access to AutoCAD architecture, AutoCAD electrical, AutoCAD mechanical, and then MEP became a part of that, but Plant 3D was not. It wasn't until I think a few years ago where Plant 3D was included as part of the collection. And that happened when AutoCAD moved to that way of subscribing to their products, where, again, if you have a subscription to AutoCAD today, then you have access to all of the different flavors of AutoCAD. And so we're continuing to strengthen the connection between those two products, between Inventor and Plant 3D. And so we've done that by improving the handoff or by enhancing the PCF export workflow between the two systems. And so we wanted to ensure that when the piping data moves from Inventor to Plant 3D, that it arrives with complete information. And so we've also improved the handling of the start and end points for piping routes. Again, ensuring that the routing information transfers more accurately. And so that wraps up my end of it. We're going to move over to Marco to demonstrate some of those capabilities.
All right. Thank you, Jim. So let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. I need to wait for you to stop sharing first.
Got it.
Okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start out opening up my assembly here. We're going to start out with code blocks. Now, I did want to bring up the open dialog box. Now, I am in, I'm already in the folder that I need, but one thing I wanted to make a note of, and especially if you're in an older version, is this option right here that I think was added in 26 to switch between the Inventor and the Windows panel. So over here on the left, you can see that if I toggle it over to the Windows panel, I have all of my saved and pinned folders. That's a huge update that I really like and I really enjoy. I just wanted to make a note of that for those of you that are in older versions. Okay, so I'm just going to navigate to my assembly here and you see up one folder. Okay, so we do already have our completed um, assembly with our iLogic already built. I'm going to start a new rule, just starting the input limits rule that we already have, and then I'll show you guys the completed rule. We won't go through the entire thing, but what this ultimately ends up with is that we have a forum that we can configure our staircase with. So let me drag that up here. This is our end goal here. And we have a few rules that sort of drive this information on this forum. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add in a new rule. So I'll add a rule. And the first thing you're going to be prompted is whether you want to create a text or a code blocks rule. I'm going to start with name here. I'm just going to name this one limits. Like I said, we're only going to go through a short bit of what the input limits rule is, just to walk through the code blocks. Okay, so right here we have our code blocks panel. And on our left side, we have all the different areas and tools sort of itemized to what we can click and drag into our workspace over here on the right. And as we grab all of any of these blocks, we'll place them over here on the right, and then the code will show down here at the bottom, the text code. Okay, so I'm going to start with a document option, and I'm going to start with the model state edit scope. I want to make sure to drag that over. So I'll go in here and you can see I'm just quickly dragging and dropping over here on the right. And the iLogic code pops up at the bottom. So now I can zoom in. And I start out set global model state to factory, making sure I'm editing all of my model states in this design. Okay, next up, I want to add in some logic. So once again, I'll just go over here on the left. I'll search down for what I need. So I need an if and do. So I'll just click that and drag it over here on the right. And now I can add in other additional options in here. So I do want another else if. So click if else if, and then I'm slowly building up my code. And you can see as I click and drag them over here on the right and select them, my code is slowly getting built down here at the bottom. Now, in this assembly, there are already parameters built. So let me open up my parameters window. And I want to be sure to leverage these parameters. So I have a lot of parameters in here that I'm going to be using inside of this rule. So I can go in here in my parameters window, and you can see I can select parameters to choose from. I do still have one more logic I need to build in here, which is and greater than. So I want to make sure that if my height is lower than a certain value, that it sets it to my minimum height. I don't want it to be below a certain value, which in this case is 20 inches. Nope, don't want to close that out yet. So you can see here, I have my logic filled out. Now I want to add in a parameter, and I already have a height parameter already built. So I can go into my parameters and set parameter value. And I want to select this one. So you can see here, click and drag, and it locks into that empty slot there. And then the code down here at the bottom is getting built. So I want to select my height out of my drop down. Narrow that down to user parameters, make that list a little smaller. Height value is less than, and I have one more, which is a numeric 20. Type that in here. If my height value is less than 20, I want to set my height value to my minimum height. So I'm going to set. And once again, I'll drop this down, select my parameter, and this one's going to be 20. Okay, so right here, if my height is less than 20, it's going to set it to my minimum height, which is 20. I don't want it to be shorter than 20 inches because then my assembly is going to break. And otherwise, I also want to make sure to add a higher limit. So I'll go through that one more time. Set height and parameter. In here really quick. And this one. Okay, so I don't want this to be above 96. And once again, this is going to be height. Okay, so you can see there's my starting point for this rule. And you could see as I sort of built that, it's already building all these parameters. It's grabbing the necessary parameters. It's setting the iLogic for me, so I don't have to build it myself. And I'm going to close this out and show you guys the completed rule now. I don't need to save that one. And this is what my completed rule looks like once I've finished up my restrictions, both on the height, on the rise of the staircase. You can see I have limits set to them, to each of the parameters that I'm using in here. And it's building the iLogic for me down here at the bottom, which if you're not a programmer and like me, I'm not really familiar with coding, this is a very good learning tool because I can sort of familiarize myself with these rules and the text behind each one of these blocks once I've built it, especially visually. You get an idea of what it's going through in the logic behind there. You can get an idea of what the text means. Another nice thing about this is if you reorder this, so if I reorder this maybe below here, it's also going to reorder the text below. So it is as easy as dragging and dropping, and the text below here gets modified as well. I'll close this out. Don't need to save that. And once you've completed your rule, you can also convert it to a text rule as well once you're done. So let me go ahead and run this form. And if we remember, we set a limit to 100. If our height changes to over 96, it'll set it back to 96. Just going to go ahead and change that value, and you can see that my upper limit is set. And then same thing, if I set it to 19, it'll restrict it down to my 20-inch lower limit. Okay, so that is our code blocks tool. So you can see I have several different rules in here that were built all the same way with code blocks. Go ahead and edit them, and I can preview all these values. Okay. Next up, I'm going to talk about the slot feature. So let me close this out. And in here, I have this clamp, and I've already built the slot in here, but I'll go ahead and delete that one and walk through it with everyone. Okay, so I do want to add 2 slots to each side of this bracket. I'm going to start going up here. And this is a sketch-driven feature. So what's nice about this, same thing as a hole, is that if you place down your holes, it does build the sketch for you, which you can then go in after and use to resize and dimension those points. Okay, so I won't worry about the position for this sample. I'll go through this dialog box here. You can see we can select our direction of our slot. Right now it is going horizontally. If I wanted to change that direction, maybe go lengthwise on this bracket, I can do that with the second option. Or if I wanted to pick a custom direction, I can use this third option here, which in my case, I don't have a custom line that I can use. So I'm just going to keep it on this horizontal. Okay. Next up, do I want fillets? In this case, I do, but we do have the option to turn those off. And then once again, if you do have a hole and you need, or if you do have a fastener and you need a clearance for it, you can turn on the hole, change the hole type, and then the fastener options will show down here at the bottom, which you can go through and set to your correct fastener size. Okay. And then the last panel down here at the bottom for the behavior, I can choose how it dimensions it and where those center marks show up. So do I want a center line through the center? Do I want a center mark? Or do I want it to go to each one of the centers for the rounded fillets at the end? Okay. And then once I've completed all of this, I think the size is okay for the one that I have. Just click OK. You can see we have our slot feature. And what's nice about having a slot feature now in your drawing is that when you create your drawing view, which I'll do very quickly here, is that now you have the option to use the whole feature note inside of your slot. So go to a top-down view. It's a little bigger. Okay, so I'll go to annotate and I'll make this slot a little bit. I'll add a seat to it so that I have a little more feature information to show. Okay, so then I can go to my hole and thread and select my slot, and it should pick up all of that information for me. And once again, as Jim mentioned, if you go to edit the dimension style, you'll see that the options are in there now to edit this style and see what the default values and which parameters it picks up on. It's taking a little moment here to open up. Okay, so right here we have our slot option and we can select which parameters it's picking up on. And that is built into the hole and thread feature note over here. And then I believe the hole table also has now the options for picking up slots as well. Okay. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to show was the mirror tool. So we'll go over here to mirror. And we do have some additional options in here, which I think all of these ones are the ones I want to mirror. You can see we have a few different options added into this version. So I want to mirror, preview. I have the addition to suppress my link, to break the link, to create a save copy as, or to not include. We have all our same features that we had in our previous version. Oh, there we go. There's my preview. Okay, so those are the ones that I had demonstrations for. You can go back to your slides.
Okay.
Okay, close this out. Okay.
There we go. All right, we can start to take a look. I answered a few of the questions in there, but we can take a look at some more in just a minute. The last thing that we wanted to mention is that earlier we were talking about ways that you can communicate or let us know if there's anything else that you'd like to see in Inventor. And these are some of the ways that you can do that, whether it's part of the user feedback community or Inventor forums or or perhaps even oh, what was the other one I was thinking of? Oh, the inside the factory events. That's right. Those resources are available in this QR code that you can see on the slide. And it's also going to include resources for other things like the Inventor blog or Autodesk University. So use this QR code if you'd like to see a list of all of the Inventor resources that we have available. Okay. Well, we can take a look at some of the other questions that have come up. And Marco, if you want to even look at the ones that I answered, if you have any feedback on those too, feel free to.
Let me see here. I don't think there is a I guess an additional constraint um enhancement for the slot. So I think constraining a bolt would be the same as it was in previous versions. And
Yeah,
then
very
for D
common one.
yeah, and then for Deanna, it looks like at the moment you can only select whether both fillets are turned on or off. It's not for individual either side of them. So you can't do a single side being filleted and another one being rectangular.
Since the slot feature is brand new, it's a good question that is that available as part of iLogic, or if you're creating code in Inventor, then yes, there is a slot feature object available to include that. Another question that came up from Devin earlier is the ability to create renderings using Autodesk Assistant. Which is a great question because some of you might have seen that Fusion has the ability to create renderings. It's called Image Gen, and it's awesome because you can take your design and then tell it what you would like to have in the background, and create a rendering. Even give your model a different color or a different material, and it's going to create a rendering for you in a matter of seconds. It's actually quite amazing. It even understands the types of models that you have in your design when it creates that rendering. Um, so that is available inside of Fusion. I don't believe that's available yet in Inventor, but many of you know if you have access to Fusion, then you can open up your Inventor models there and use Image Gen.
All right, team. We had a couple more questions regarding AI. I know they're kind of um, controversial in some cases. So I don't know how you guys want to handle the AI questions. You want to take these offline and try to answer them later? Do you try to take a stab at some of these?
Yeah. When it comes to obviously we understand that not everyone wants to use it. It is something that can be turned on or off. You can do that per seat. You can turn off the Autodesk Assistant. If you're looking to turn it off organization, like for your entire organization, there are ways to do that as well. but that is something that you'd probably need to contact technical support regarding.
Great. Any other things we'd like to add in this session before we call it for the day?
I guess there was another question that came up regarding adding folders. A question about adding patterns to a folder. I'm not sure if that's component pattern or feature pattern, but either way, you should be able to add those patterns to those folders as well. But yeah, I think that wraps up the ones that we can get to. Again, if you have specific questions regarding Autodesk Assistant when it comes to support regarding that, I would encourage you to get a hold of KETIV or perhaps even use the Inventor forums to learn more about Autodesk Assistant and how to manage it for your users.
Good point, Jim. Okay. Well, I think that's going to call it for today then. Thank you, Jim and Marco, for your time. I appreciate the custom demos, the time you spent showing everyone all the cool new features coming out. And yeah, we look forward to having you guys back next week. We're continuing our series on automating design automation in Autodesk Inventor. So please come back and check our next session there. And then we have these fun AI sessions coming up. So please go to ketiv.com/events and you guys can catch us on upcoming sessions. So I think that's it for today. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Marco. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.